to the Christian woman who is unmarried and pregnant. This does not change everything. I know there are people that probably tell you that, and maybe you've even convinced yourself of that. But let me tell you what hasn't changed. Romans 11:29 says that the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. So you are just as called, you are just as gifted as you ever have been. And you may think that you have disqualified yourself. However, I want you to think about King David in the Bible. You know, he found himself in a similar situation where he was expecting a child who was conceived outside of marriage and actually in an affair. And not only that, but he also had the mother's husband killed. And not only that, but this was not a stranger to him. Uriah was actually listed in 2 Samuel as one of David's top 37 men out of the whole entire army. So Uriah was actually one of his closest, most loyal, fiercest warriors. He was not a stranger. And yet he had his friend killed to try to cover up what he had done. But my point is, I want you to think about Psalm 51, where David, he was repenting of what had happened instead of continuing to try to cover it up. But he says, wash me and I will be whiter than snow. And this is the part about where you're not disqualified, because a couple verses down, he says, then I will teach transgressors your ways and sinners will be converted to you. So David, because he repented, God continued to use him throughout his life, the years after that. He was not disqualified from being used by God in a mighty way, and neither are you. The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable, and God's plan for your life, for your good and not for evil, like Jeremiah 29:11 says, that hasn't changed. There is so much that hasn't changed. And I want you to take a hold of that, and don't disqualify yourself of being able to continue to fulfill every good plan and purpose that God has for you, and God to use you mightily in his kingdom. And you're going to have that baby grow up and watch their mom be that person. That baby's going to grow up watching you fulfill the plan of God for your life.